Hi, I'm Regina McCann-Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management, and welcome to our Women in Wealth series. Today, I have a new friend with me, and Kylie, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and what you love about what you do?
Yeah. Okay. So again, my name is Kylie Ota. I am a burnout recovery coach for entrepreneurs. And basically, I help women in business to heal burnout from the inside out. And I
Ooh,
know there's a lot of talk about burnout these days, but I was actually doing burnout and helping people with burnout before COVID, before all of this started happening. And I really niched down into helping entrepreneurs and people who work from home because the whole work-life balance thing, especially for women and moms, has been such a big thing
you're
these
not
days.
kidding. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why I decided to move from the health coaching aspects. I'm a certified health coach, but I moved from that and I combined it with all the project management experience that I've had. I was in the oil and gas industry for 19 years, managing all kinds of different projects there. And I help I gathered all of that data and that information. I used it and I translated it into helping out with marketing projects. And so I've been helping my clients not only with the health burnout stuff, but also the mindset, the inner work that needs to happen to really let go of some of the things in our businesses. Because right when we are business owners, there's a lot of hats that we have to wear, and sometimes letting go and in letting go, in scaling, you have to learn how to let go. And in order for some women to heal from burnout and for them to scale their businesses, we did a lot of mindset work and coaching around like, okay, like it's okay to let this part of your business go. It's not going to fall, it's not going to drop. And yeah, so that's a part I really love about what I do now is combining all of those modalities, things that I learned as a health coach, things that I learned as a manager and being all the leadership development things that you learn in your career, the all the Franklin Covey, things that you
Oh my
learn,
gosh. Yeah.
Ken Blanchard, all of those things, they I'm helping entrepreneurs apply them to their businesses because sometimes, entrepreneurs don't get exposed to those kind of leadership development courses and classes. And I can bring some of those concepts to entrepreneurship and help them to really understand what it's like to run a large scale business, but, apply it to like a smaller medium business model. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's pretty cool because I mean, especially I know you said you've been working with this select area before COVID, but I mean, almost everybody has felt some type of burnout after COVID, whether or not they felt it immediately after COVID or are still kind of realizing it now. There's such a big need for what you're doing. I can imagine you're a pretty busy lady.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really like working with my clients and helping them with whatever level of stress that they're experiencing. Is in my world, I have this thing called the time wheel,
Hmm.
and it's the four different drivers of entrepreneurship.
Okay.
It's TIME is an acronym, and the company that I came from, they love acronyms. They even have a whole website dedicated to acronyms, so it's kind of hilarious. But T stands for time, and time when we're talking about burnout, usually time is the one thing that's like, "Oh, I don't have enough time to do that." So that's why they're feeling stressed or overwhelmed and burnt out. And then ideas is the I. In entrepreneurship, and even if you're working in a career, like a corporate job, there's a lot of ideas, right? If you're managing a team, each team member will contribute their ideas to a project, and there's a lot of distilling of ideas, right? We have meeting after meeting after meeting, right? To just talk about all the ideas before we even get into logistics for
Hmm.
these planning meetings, right?
Right.
So those are the ideas. M stands for money. And right, if you have a business or you're in a career, right? Your corporate company, right? It's really about profits, right? If we're going to stay in business, profits are a thing. And so we have to talk about money. And But there are certain archetypes. So I created a quiz based on these four things that actually correlate to a certain archetype and the four drivers. Before I get into that, though, the E stands for energy. And this one talks about just your physical spaces, how it contributes to your energy. Because there are some people who, especially like neurodivergent or ADHD people, like overstimulation is
Mm-hmm.
a thing. So
Mm-hmm.
cleaning up their physical environment is part of getting rid of some of that burnout and some of that overwhelm. And but on the flip side to that, like a lot of neurodivergents are like out of sight, out of mind. So we
Right.
do have to give them, ways that they can contain the clutter, but it's not visually stimulating or overwhelming. So yeah, those are the four different drivers for entrepreneurship. And but it's also the drivers for a lot of businesses. Because like I said, I took a lot of the things that I learned managing projects in corporate. I mean, we're talking about large scale, like multi-million dollar projects, more on like in a construction
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, because it's oil and gas. So a lot of that was like managing, building projects and things like that. But it's time versus money, right? When we're looking at the viability of any idea, right, in all of these planning meetings, it's like, okay, time versus money. If we do invest the money in this thing, are we going to come in like under time or under budget?
Right.
Yeah. And a lot of times we have to make decisions, and there's a lot of mental fatigue that happens. Like, okay, when we're deciding which direction we're going to move in a project, it's like, okay, do I have the money to throw at the problem? Like if we're on crunch time and we have a hard deadline, well, these two are directly proportionate. If you don't have the time to, extend the timeline to get everything done, and all of these things kind of need to get done before the project is due, you probably have to hire more people or hire more competent staff, like a contractor to come in and help with some of the things that can't get done. On the other hand, if you can extend the project deadline, right, you can give your team more space, more bandwidth, more room in order to get the project completed. And in oil and gas, our two main priorities were safety over production, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Producing, producing is one thing, but if we hurt people or the environment in the process, like
Yeah. It doesn't work well.
that does not work well. So, yeah, the time and the money are the two big things that I talk about with my clients who are ready to scale their businesses. And then the ideas and the energy, they're also directly proportionate. A lot of times, entrepreneurs, we have a lot of ideas, or even in corporate, right? These planning meetings, everyone's throwing their ideas like, oh, what about this? What about
Yeah.
that? What about that? But do we have the energy to execute? At the end of the day, we can have as many ideas as we want, but do we have the energy to effectively execute on those ideas? So, taking all four of these into consideration, the time and money is the profitability axis, and the ideas and the energies like the productivity axis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive. All that thought goes into something that you probably make it seamless when you're working with a client going through it, but when you break down all the parts, that's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, there are a lot of parts. And that's why I developed the archetypes, because each different archetype has a different driver. So if you are the powerhouse archetype, right, she's a producer. So
Mhm.
her driver would be money. So we'd
Mhm.
focus mostly on that money quadrant and the things that are behind that money quadrant, like what's really driving her to want to do all these projects. And usually for that producer archetype, she is really driven by success and getting noticed, getting accolades, even like how many certifications does she have? Like she's always trying to really improve herself and get better at her job, you
Right.
know?
Right.
So we have to kind of look at how much energy she's putting out, to get that success factor. And then
Sure.
and then dealing with the imposter syndrome, like, no,
Oh,
hun, you are successful. You don't need any more certifications. We can dial this back down and let's just focus on what you are successful at, what you already have under your belt. And we'll focus on these things instead of like out here, like chasing. Yeah.
it's really hard to rein in the imposter syndrome. I mean, like I've been in my industry for over 25 years and I still second guess myself. Like I catch myself all the time. I'm like, no, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for this long. I know what I'm doing. But I
Yeah.
don't know if it's, I mean, because I talked to the guys about it and they have it too, but I almost want to think it's like a female thing because we do it so much, but I know the guys
Yeah.
do it too.
Yeah. And I think especially for the industry that you're in finance, and the industry that I was in, oil and gas, right? It's very male dominated
Very.
industry.
Yeah.
So I my female friends in oil and gas used to have this running joke. We have to work twice as hard as the men for half the amount of recognition.
Yes, that happens. That happens, sadly. Sadly. I can imagine in oil and gas, it's even more male dominated than finance. I mean, finance is pretty male dominated, but oil and gas, I just picture the cowboy, that kind of guy in oil and gas.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool that you were in that industry for so many years.
Yeah. I got into it by accident. I actually had no idea what I was applying for, but I was a single mom, newly single mom, age 20, and I didn't know what I really wanted to get into, but my mom was like, "Oh yeah, this is a really good job. They pay like six figures." I'm like, "Oh, sure. Let me just apply." I had no idea what I was
Wow.
getting into. And then when I got into it, I'm like, "Oh, this is a career job." The questions that they ask you on the interview. I was like, "Oh, okay." And then once I got into it, so luckily when I got into it, a lot of the men that I was working with, they were very financially savvy. And every morning they go in, check the stock prices, check their retirement accounts. And I was like, what is this? Like, I had no idea. Like, as a 20-year-old, right? These are
Yeah.
not the things that you're thinking about.
Yeah.
And so I was learning about finance through these men who were on their way out, like they were ready to retire. I'm like, oh, and of course, right, taking, financial advice from people who, but they had a one-track mind. They were looking at their stock because we had
Right.
stock options, and they were looking at their 401ks and their annuity plans and just saying, okay, based on where I am today, okay, I can retire in like at age whatever. And I
Right.
was oh, plus maintaining the benefits packages, and right, they have these magic numbers for when you can retire, right? And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And because I was young and I didn't have a whole lot of responsibilities, right? I was a single parent, still living with my parents. I was like, oh, let me max out my 401k.
Good
So I
girl.
maxed out
Good girl.
early.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, like I've had to pull from that during the low seasons in my business, but it's good to know that I have that safety net there. I mean, you're not supposed to do that because, right, there's all these penalties and things attached. But I had enough in savings and whatever, and because I have invested in other things like Roths, and I didn't know what any of those things were
So,
as a 20-year-old.
yeah, but so the guys you worked with helped educate you on that, and that's really cool. They
Yeah,
kind of took you under their wing. That's
yeah,
cool. That's very
yeah,
cool. Now, what were some of the challenges that you faced working as a professional woman?
yeah. That whole women being in the oil and gas industry was really hard. And another challenge that I had was like, don't mix business and personal. My
Mm.
ex-husband and I used to work together. So
Oh,
our divorce was very, very public.
uh,
Yeah, our divorce was very public, and that was really hard to navigate. And, because some of the personal stuff came out during that time, it's hard to separate once those things come out, but there was some negative press that I had to really overcome after all of that got exposed. And
Oh,
it affected my career, it affected my ability to get promoted. And so what I said before, right, I had to work twice as hard for like half of the recognition, just as the ground level. And after the negative press came out, it's like, wow, I felt like I had to work triply hard or
yeah,
quadruply hard to overcome the negative press. And honestly, though, it was a catalyst for my personal development, because up till that point, I was like, well, I'm just here. Like, I don't know if I really want to be in this career. It
right.
it was hard. It was challenging. There was a lot of shift work involved, especially with children and managing all of that, the schedules and all of that was really hard. Um, but when I got a negative report, they do your feedback reports, right? Every 6 months or whatever. I got a negative report saying that I was too like emotional or what have you. And it was affecting how I was showing up as a professional. And that was really a catalytic moment for me because I said, huh, if this is what I'm projecting, like I don't want to be receiving that, you know? So, like, how do I change the perception that people have of me? So that's when I actually started digging deep into personal development and seeking out coaching and seeking other avenues of personal development. Because at the time, we didn't have leadership development because right, we were based in Hawaii, so we didn't have a lot of personal and leadership development courses at our local facility. So I had to go look for it elsewhere. And then when we had some leadership development opportunities, they were starting to fly people in to provide those leadership skills to us as a group because they realized that there was a gap in
Mm,
the leadership that was coming up and through the ranks. Like you said, a lot of cowboy
yeah.
mentality was happening, and they wanted to really develop us as professionals at that point for the people who were coming up through the ranks and not having that cowboy mentality because it did affect safety, it did affect production, like how we were showing up to work and how you know these middle managers were managing their direct reports and
Mm,
how the company was coming developing as a whole really depended on how they were mentoring these next generations of the up and coming workers. So it was really great. And then by that time, when the leadership development was introduced, I was already in training and learning and development in that section of the company. So like my heart was so happy. I was like, this is the zone. Like this is what people need. And that's why I pull a lot of that material from that era of my life into my coaching now, especially as entrepreneurs. Sometimes in entrepreneurship, there's a lot of focus on social media, marketing, those things that like drive the needle forward.
yeah.
Um, but really at the end of the day, right, the soft skills are what get you noticed, right? How are you holding space for your clients? And I think, in the finance industry as well, right? There are many people, you could buy financial products from any person who's selling a financial product, but at the end of the day, it's the soft skills that will attract the right client to you. And it's like, well, how does Regina treat her people? Like, oh, I love her. Like, even if you're just shooting the breeze, sometimes the clients really need a sounding board for someone to listen. And then as you're listening to your clients, you can hear their financial goals and what they're telling you. If their children are the thing that they talk most about, it's like, oh, okay, part of this client goals must be maybe like a 529 for their child. And so we could set that up because they talk a lot about their children. So you can find out a lot about a person using those soft skill sets and really enhance whatever business or career that you are currently in. Because that's how that was, I didn't realize it at the time, but as I was developing my soft skills, the feedback forms and things that I'm getting back, during those those feedback times, they just started shifting because I was connecting with my direct reports. I was connecting, you know, with my upper level management. And just by having that rapport built with these people, it shifted the way that they saw me. It shifted their perspective about my work performance, and it really
Wow,
made a difference.
that's great. That's
Yeah.
really good. That's a great story. I like that.
Yeah.
Now, so with your coaching practice, if people want to learn more about you and what you're doing, how do they find you, follow you? Where are you at out there?
Yeah. My primary platform right now is Instagram
Yeah,
because I love showing up on video. Short form video has been
yeah,
really fun these days.
yeah.
So I'm Kylie.Ota, OTA on Instagram. And if you want to learn your archetype, I kind of touched a little bit about it when I was talking about the time wheel earlier. So there are four different archetypes. If you want to find out what your driver is and what your archetype is, and some steps to kind of help you mitigate those and really use your archetypes as a strength and how to really shape your career or your business, you can go to burnoutarchetypequiz.com. Again, burnoutarchetypequiz.com, and you can take the quiz, get your archetype, and then get some insights to like your personality type and as an entrepreneur, like what marketing style you should dive into. Like I love it. Like I love personality quizzes and in a former life, I was a mental health specialist in the army as well. So like psychology and like all of those things are really my jam as well. So it's so fun to have people understand their archetype. And there's this light bulb moment that happens when people understand
Mhm.
their archetype and like, oh, so that's why I am like this. And it really helps with that imposter syndrome we were talking about earlier. Because once they understand, okay, I am this archetype and so is probably a different archetype than I am. So, like, we're not even in direct competition. So, it doesn't really make sense to be comparing myself to her because she's a totally different archetype. So, that's why she runs her business the way that she does, or that's how she shows up. You know, at work the way that she shows up and this is how she runs her meetings and this is how she runs her life. It's like, well, this is how I am. Like this is how I'm inherently built. So I can, stop comparing myself to this person and really build my life and my business around how I'm naturally gifted. So it's always exciting to hear people give their feedback on their archetype and once they like have this aha moment, like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, see, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, it's fun. You make it sound fun, although it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. And I like digging deep with my clients as well. Just, getting into that deeper, the inner work and like where
Mhm.
the roots have come from, like
Yep.
roots of insecurities. And so that's where it gets hard. But um, just using that gift of rapport, building rapport with my clients, it allows me to also go deeper with them and get to the roots faster. And I obviously I like to talk. So that's another archetype
Good.
too. So,
Good.
but if you don't have that, like you can still build rapport in other ways with your clients based on your personality or your
Right.
archetype. So,
True.
yeah.
So now let's pretend you're going into a time machine and tell me what your retirement vision looks like.
Oh, I already have that vision.
Oh,
Like,
go girl, go, go, go.
yeah. Um, so I love cruises. 'Cause
Okay.
we took our first cruise when we got married and we went on our honeymoon on a I, I mean, I lived in Hawaii for most of my life. You would see the cruise ships rolling in, and it's like, whatever. It's a boat, right?
Yeah.
But when I took my first cruise and I realized like everything's free, like like unlimited food, or sometimes unlimited drink, depending on if you buy the package, right? And you get to go to all of these different stops. I love to travel. It's like, huh. And then I found out that elderly people, they actually live on cruise ships instead of
I've
going to a
heard that.
retirement home.
I've
I was
heard
like,
that.
That's what I want. I want that.
I don't know anybody who's done it, but I've heard stories about that. And I'm like, I can't imagine doing that.
Yeah, because you get, right? You get the
Get
in-room
everything.
care, you
Yeah.
get everything. Free food, and you have people who treat you like a guest instead of a responsibility.
Right, right, right. Well,
Yeah,
that there's a lot to be said for that.
right.
All
So
right.
that's my retirement goal.
Amazing. That's very cool. It's the first time I've heard that, which is really neat. I love how you shaped that story. Very cool. And especially for someone who lived in what people in on the East Coast would say paradise, because you lived in Hawaii for so long. That would be our vision of like, oh, somewhere beautiful and tropical, and you're like, no, I'm gonna get on the cruise ship. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
But I think it's because I lived on an island my
Yeah,
entire life,
true, true.
traveling the world seems like a dream, you know?
Yeah, can imagine. I can imagine. Well, thank you so much for joining me. You were absolute pleasure to talk to, and I'm really excited to, follow you in your journeys with your coaching.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And thanks everyone else for listening. Again, I'm Regina McCann Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management. My website is forgewealth.com, and you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Forge Wealth, on Instagram now at Forge Wealth Management, and of course, LinkedIn, Regina McCann Hess. Go make it a great day and go make a new adventure. That's your call to action today. See what your adventure is going to be, and go take the quiz that we spoke about today.